Hey gang, and welcome back to a very special episode. No, this isn't Clone High, this is an extra gameplay brought to you by the Magali Villeneuve and Original Magic Art Kickstarter campaign. This Kickstarter campaign has blown through its target, and we're unlocking more and more tiers to add to the Kickstarter campaign, featuring the gorgeous art of Arietta the Charmed Apple, Huntsmaster of the Fells, Liliana, Waker of the Dead, and Narset, Parter of Veils, and more arts to be unlocked. There's sure to be an art that tickles your fancy. Be sure to use the affiliate link down below when backing this Kickstarter campaign. As I said, today's episode is special because they asked us to play only commanders featuring the art from Magali. In today's game, Felix is playing Anowon, keeping 3 islands, Sunken Hollow, Blighted Agent, Sword of Body and Mind, and Distant Melody. Seb has built Elesh Norn, and they keep Coat of Arms, Rest in Peace, Teferi's Protection, Idol of Oblivion, Norn's Inquisitor, and 2 planes. Max is rocking one of my favorite commanders from her, with Anikthea, keeping a Forest, a Swamp, Wild Growth, the Bindings of the Titans, Satyr Enchanter, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, and the Mending of Dominaria. Last but not least, Marie is playing Teysa Karlov, keeping Archon of Cruelty, Drivnod Carnage Dominus, Attrition, 2 Swamps, Isolated Chapel, and Crypt of Agadim. Felix wins the die roll and starts us off. He displays a tap Sunken Hollow. Seb's got a Plains for turn. Max draws and plays a Forest, and then casts Wild Growth and enchants it onto the Forest. Marie plays a tapped Crypt of Agadim and passes turn. Felix drops an island and pays 2 for a Blighted Agent, with the table suddenly becoming very scared. Seb's got a Plains, and then pays 2 for an Idol of Oblivion, and they pass turn. Max has a Swamp, and he's able to pay 3 for Dryad of Elysian Grove. He then plays a Command Tower as his second land for turn, and taps it for a land tax, and passes to Marie. Marie's got a Swamp, and passes. Felix draws, playing an island, and casting Sword of Body and Mind. He then goes to combat, and infects Max for 1 with the Blighted Agent, and passes. Seb draws and plays a Plains. They cast Norn's Inquisitor, incubating 2, and then taps the Idol of Oblivion to draw a card, and passes to Max. Max draws and plays Satyr Enchanter. He then moves to combat. He swings the Dryad back at Felix, dealing 2, and passing. Marie has an Isolated Chapel for turn, and pays 3 for Attrition, and passes back to Felix. Felix draws and plays an island. He then equips the Sword of Body and Mind onto the Blighted Agent, and goes to combat. He swings the Agent at Max, this time for 3, and he takes the hit. Max then mills 10 cards, and Felix gets a 2/2 Wolf token. In his post-combat main phase, Felix then prowls in a Stink Drinker Bandit, and passes to Seb. Seb has a Plains for turn, and they cast a Commander Sphere. And then cast Duelist to the Deep Faith, and pass to Max. Max's land tax triggers on his upkeep, and he gets to go and find 3 basics, and then draws for turn. He plays a Plains, and then a Forest, and goes to combat, swinging both creatures at Felix. Felix trades his Wolf with a Satyr Enchanter, and takes 2. In his second main phase, Max then casts Extinguish All Hope, with nothing else, he passes. Marie's turn has a Shattered Sanctum as her land drop, and she pays 4 for Court of Grace, becoming the Monarch. She then draws on her end step, and passes. Felix plays an island, and then plays an Expedition Stalker, and equips it with the sword, and passes to Seb. Seb draws, and flips one of their Incubator tokens. They then go to combat, and swing it at Marie for 2. In their second main phase, they cast Rest in Peace, exiling all graveyards. Max draws and plays a Swamp. He goes to combat, swinging the Dryad at Seb this time, because Rest in Peace shuts off his deck. He also gets to take the Monarchy from Seb, and after combat, Max then casts Battle at the Hell Vault. It comes in, exiling the Court of Grace, Sword of Body and Mind, and Rest in Peace. With nothing else, Max passes, and draws from being the Monarch. Marie draws and plays a Swamp. She then casts Teysa, and passes. Felix draws, and plays an Exotic Orchard. He then casts Anowon, and swings the Expedition Stalker at Max for 3. Max takes the hit, and mills 3 from Anowon's trigger. After combat, Felix then casts Blade of Selves and passes. Seb's turn and they continue their trend of graveyard hate, playing as Scavenger Grounds. They then pay enough for Elesh Norn and pass to Max. Max draws and in his main phase takes up the battle at the Hell Vault, this time exiling Attrition, Anowon, and Elesh Norn. He then plays the Binding of the Titans, and all of his opponents mill 3. Max then follows up with Anikthea, and as she comes in, targets the Enchantress's presence with her trigger. Seb responds to the target though, cracking the Scavenger Grounds and exiling all graveyards. Going to combat, Max swings the Dryad at Seb again, and Seb takes the hit, and Max then passes. Murray just draws, plays a Reflecting Pool, and casts Junji. Felix has an island for turn, and plays a Surefoot Infiltrator. He then casts Teysa, God of the Sea. Going to combat, he swings the Stalker at Max for 3, and then draws on his end step, and passes. Seb's turn is quite quick, as they cast an Everflowing Chalice multi-kick for 2, and they then play a Phyrexian Censer, and pass. Max triggers land tax and goes to find 3 more basics, and then draws for turn. In his main phase he finishes the battle at the Hell Vault, and everyone gets their permanents back, and Max gets to make an Avacyn token. With the court coming back in, Marie becomes the Monarch. Max then moves up the Binding, but because of the Rest in Peace having already done it, there's nothing to exile. Max then casts a Beast Within and targets the Phyrexian Censer. Once that's done, he plays an Aura Shards. He then plays a Sanctum Weaver, which comes in and blows up the Rest in Peace thanks to the Aura Shards trigger. With nothing else, he passes. Marie makes an Angel in her upkeep since she regained the Monarchy, and then draws her turn. She plays a Fabled Passage, and cracks it for a Plains, and then casts Drivnod. Going to combat, she swings Junji at Seb, and they take 5, and Marie pays the 1 to Elesh Norn's ability. She then passes turn. Felix scries 1, and then draws for turn. He then plays a Disciple of Deceit, and moves a Sword of Body and Mind onto the Infiltrator. Going to combat, the Infiltrator goes at Marie, and he swings the Stalker at Max, and before moving to blocks, taps the Disciple to make the Infiltrator unblockable. Marie and Max then take their hit, with Marie milling 5 and then 10, and Felix making a 2/2 Wolf token, and Max then milling 3. Felix then draws a card since a creature was milled, and in his second main phase, he casts Sig, River Cutthroat, and passes. During his end step, he gets to draw a card from Sig. Seb draws and plays Archangel of Tithes, and then goes to combat. They then swing Elesh Norn at Felix, who declares no blocks. Seb then gets the Monarchy, and draws during their end step. Max draws and returns Yenna to his hand from the Binding of the Titans, and then plays a Swamp for turn. He casts a Destiny Spinner, and targets Attrition with the Aura Shards. With the trigger on the stack, Marie responds by sacrificing Junji with it, and targets the Sanctum Weaver with the Destroy triggers. With Junji dying, she gets 3 on death triggers. She layers it so that the first trigger has her opponents discarding 2 and losing 2, and she then reanimates the Wormcoil Engine and Pitiless Plunderer. Before letting the triggers resolve, Seb responds with a Teferi's Protection, but they'll still have to discard 2. Marie then loses 4 as the creatures come back, and Max continues his turn, casting a Mending of Dominaria. As it comes in, he mills 2, and brings back an Ondu Spirit Dancer, which he then casts for turn. The Aura Shard trigger then destroys the Sword of Body and Mind, and Max goes to combat. He swings Avacyn at Marie, and Anikthea at Felix. Anikthea's on attack trigger exiles the Growing Ranks, and has it come back in as a 3/3 zombie token, and he gets to make a second copy of it from the Spirit Dancer, seeing an enchantment come in. The 2 extra Aura Shard triggers then target the Blade of Selves and Court of Grace. Felix then blocks Anikthea with the Wolf token and Teysa, and Max kills the Wolf token. Marie doesn't block though, and takes the full 8, and with nothing else, Max passes. Marie draws and plays a Swamp. She immediately goes to combat and hits Felix with her Angel for 4, and then plays Vanquish the Horde. Marie then activates Drivnod in response, exiling some cards from her graveyard to make it indestructible, and the Vanquish then resolves. This has Marie getting 9 treasures and 6 worm tokens, while Seb continues to remain unaffected since they're phased out. After that, Marie casts an Archon of Cruelty, making Max sacrifice the Avacyn as it comes in, loses 3, and discards a card, while she draws a card and gains 3. She then plays a Witch of the Moors. Moving to her end step, Marie returns Junji with the Witch of the Moors trigger and passes. Felix scries and draws and plays a Swamp for turn. He plays a Thieves Guild Enforcer, and then a Nightville Sprite, and everyone mills 2. He follows up with a Contraband King, milling another 2, and passing. Seb draws and activates Elesh Norn, flipping it into the Argent Etchings, and incubating 2 5 times, and then flipping them all. Seb then activates the Idol to draw a card, and unfortunately draws into Mondrak, which they then cast and pass turn. Max draws and plays Sithis, destroying a lifelinking worm token with the Aura Shards. He remembers his Mending of Dominaria trigger and mills 2, and once more returns the Ondu Spirit Dancer. Max then casts Anikthea again, drawing a card from Sithis and gaining 1, and as she comes in, destroys a worm token with the Aura trigger. Anikthea then exiles the Binding of the Old Gods to have it come in as an enchantment 3/3 zombie token, and destroys more worms with the Aura Shards. With nothing else, he passes. Marie draws and plays a Plains. She then activates the Crypt of Agadim, making a bunch of black mana, and uses it to cast a Black Market, and then an Orzhov Enforcer. Going to combat, she swings out at Max, and he chumps Drivnod with Sithis, but takes the rest. In her post-combat main phase, Marie then casts Damnation, which has Seb responding by activating and sacrificing 2 of their tokens to make Mondrak indestructible. The board then gets wiped, and Marie gets 2 spirits from Orzhov Enforcer, and the black market jumps up to a whopping 34 counters, but with nothing else, she has to pass. Felix scries and draws and plays a Swamp. He then plays Una and passes to Seb. Seb draws and ticks up the Argent Etchings, buffing Mondrak with +1/+1 and a double strike trigger. They then play a Plains and pass, drawing from being the Monarch at the end of turn. Max draws and in his main phase, finishes the Mending of Dominaria. He then shuffles his graveyard into his library. Max then casts a Herald of the Pantheon, destroying the black market, and then casts Seal of Cleansing and passes to Marie. Marie draws and replays Junji, and then casts a Jewel Lotus, cracking it to help immediately recast Teysa. Going to combat, she swings Drivnod and her 2 spirits at Max, and once more Max chumps Drivnod, but takes the 2 in the air, and Marie gains 2 life because Teysa grants tokens lifelink. Marie then passes, and during her end step, Felix activates Una and targets Seb. They mill 2, hitting a Halo Fountain, which has Felix making a fairy token. Felix draws and recasts Anowon. He then goes to combat, swinging Una and a fairy at Seb. Seb takes the 8 and then mills 8, but has no creatures for Anowon's trigger. Felix does at least gain the Monarchy, and he moves to his end step to draw a card. Seb draws and moves the Argent Etchings to the final chapter, destroying everything except for Phyrexians, artifacts, and lands. With Junji dying once more, Marie is able to reanimate the Archon of Cruelty, Sir Conrad, and Witch of the Moors, and loses a total of 6 life. With the Archon entering, she targets Seb with the ability, and deals 2 to each of her opponents with Sir Conrad. Seb isn't done wiping the board though, and casts Hour of Reckoning, which wipes away everything except for Mondrak and Drivnod again, and Marie gets a few more Sir Conrad triggers. With nothing else, Seb passes. Max draws and plays Composer of the Springs, and then recasts Anikthea. As she comes in, he exiles Aura Shards with the trigger, and destroys the Idol of Oblivion with it as it enters. With nothing else, he passes. Marie draws and plays a Cryptcast. She then recasts Teysa, extorting her to get some life back. Moving to combat, she swings Drivnod at Felix, who gets hit for 8 and she becomes the Monarch. After that, Marie then draws on her end step and passes. Felix plays a Swamp and then casts a Commander Sphere and then recasts Anowon. Seb draws and moves straight to combat. They swing Mondrak at Marie, but Marie responds with an Anguish Unmaking and extorts it to exile Mondrak, regaining the life that she would lose normally. With nothing else, Seb just passes. Max has a Plains, and once more we see the Ondu Spirit Dancer come in, and he targets the Commander Sphere with the Aura Shard trigger. Felix responds before it's destroyed, sacrificing it to draw a card. Max then swings Anikthea and the Aura Shard's creature at Marie. getting back the Seal of Cleansing with the Anikthea trigger. She then takes the hit, and after that, Max passes. Marie just draws and plays a swamp. Felix scries, and then draws her turn and plays Thada Adel. He then casts Distant Melody, naming Rogue and drawing 2. Felix then swings Anowon at Marie, and after it connects, she mills 2, including Kakusho, which allows Felix to draw a card. He then plays an Underground River and passes to Seb. Seb just draws, plays a Sword of Hearth and Home, and passes to Max. Max has got a Swamp for turn, and casts Demon of Fates to sign, copying it with the Ondu Spirit Dancer. He decides not to destroy Seb's sword, and instead puts the Aura Shards trigger onto Thassa. Moving to combat, Max swings Anikthea and 3 3/3s at Marie, and she double blocks Anikthea, trading away Teysa and taking the rest. After that, Max moves to his end step, drawing from being the Monarch. Marie draws and replays Teysa. She then casts a Scuttling Doom Engine and extorts it. Marie then goes to combat to attempt to take them out, but Seb responds with a Riot Control to fog the attack and jumps up to 22 life. With nothing else, Marie passes. Felix scries, draws for turn, and plays an island. He then plays Open into Wonder and targets 2 of his creatures to make them unblockable, and then swings Thada Adel at Max and Anowon at Marie. Max is taken out, and Marie takes 2, so she mills 2, but doesn't hit a creature, so Felix doesn't draw. After combat, Felix casts Frog Tosser Banneret, and then draws from being the Monarch and passes to Seb. Seb draws, and recasts Elesh Norn, and just passes after that. Marie plays a Reliquary Monk in her main phase, and goes to combat. She swings Drivnod at Seb, and the rest go at Felix. But Felix is ready with a timely Aetherize. With all of her attackers bounced back to her hand, Marie then plays a Lake of the Dead. As it comes in, she sacrifices a swamp, and then starts to rebuild by casting Cryptghast, and then activates the lake, sacrificing a swamp to make 4 black mana, and uses it to help replay Teysa and then Drivnod. With nothing else, she passes. Felix scries, draws, and then in his main phase, casts a Thieving Skydiver and kicks it to steal the Sword of Hearth and Home. Felix then moves the sword onto Thada Adel and goes to combat. He makes Thada Adel unblockable with Thassa and swings her at Marie. Marie takes the 5, and Felix then goes and tutors into Marie's library, exiling a Phyrexian Altar. And then mills her for 5 from Anowon. She hits no creatures again, and Felix then blinks Thada Adel with a sword trigger and goes to grab a swamp, and passes. Seb draws and plays a Plains. They play out an Anointed Procession, and then Intangible Virtue, and pass to Marie. Marie draws and replays the Scuttling Doom Engine and extorts it once more, but Felix has a Soul Manipulation and counters the creature. She then goes to combat and swings out at Felix, who lines up blocks, but still takes 2. Marie then activates Drivnod to make it indestructible again and save it from Thassa, but with nothing else, just moves to her end step, drawing from being the Monarch. Felix's turn has him equipping the sword to the Skydiver, and he then replays Una. He then casts a Vampire Cutthroat and moves to combat. This has Felix then swinging the Skydiver and Thassa at Marie, which takes her out, and Felix then flickers the Skydiver again and gets an island with the trigger and passes to Seb. Seb draws and wastes no time playing Akroma's Will and giving Elesh Norn double strike and protection, which is enough to sneak in and take Felix out, winning the game. Game review time. This game was 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 13 seconds. And it felt like everyone had a great answer at a great time. Early on, Maxim's deck was able to deal with Felix's Infect, and considering how many board wipes there were, Anikthea was really great at recovering. I think the main thing that kept it in check was the Rest in Peace from Seb's Elesh Norn deck early on. Seb's deck was basically a token deck, although you wouldn't have really known it other than that one time that they flipped Elesh Norn into the Argent. It's a bit of a shame when a deck doesn't get to show off its theme, but I do like the fact that they were able to win with Elesh Norn through combat damage at least. Marie's Teysa Karlov deck did exactly what Teysa Karlov wants to do, which is see creatures die. Having that Dravnot out just made things even crazier, and having 3 Jinji triggers just seems like it should be illegal. It was so busted. I was also happy to see Anowon, since my only experience with this was playing it against the other Zendikar precon deck in a 1v1 scenario. Unfortunately, that doesn't give you a really good idea of how it's going to play out, so it was cool to see in action.